Guys, welcome to Drum Paradise. Chad Cromwell, Dennis Holt. We're here to discuss tone wings.
Good to see you, Harry.
Good to see you guys. Dennis, you were kind enough to introduce me to tone wings. I was a little skeptical at first because of messing with the integrity of the inner drum shell. And it's very interesting. It's been a great thing.
I remember when I met Vlad, and I'm trying to think, what in the world is this going to be about? Because it was a mutual friend from California. He said we were with Steve Ferroni and thought we'd come to Nashville and introduce him to me, and I went, what? Really? And so he pulled these things out, and I started thinking the same thing about how in the world is this going to help a drum? You have to pull the drum apart, do all these things. And he said, let me show you. And I think that was, oh no, it was one of my DW snares. Okay. One that's sat in the case for a while, and I kept it because it was part of a tour kit that I had years ago, and I just said, hey, let's throw some in this and see what happens.
Well, let's take a look at exactly what you did to this drum and what the process is and why there's 4 in here.
Well, 4
and these
is...
We'll take a look at.
Yeah.
They're different sizes.
And there's some that are split, so you can have one like this and have it split. And Vlad also does a small one split. And it's a bit, it's experimental, but depending on what type of metal or what type of wood, or if the drum's fiberglass. And so you pull a head off the top. Top's easier. And undo some of the tension casing screws, and they fit right in. If the drum's tighter, smaller, like a piccolo, or even some 5x14s, one's good enough. And it touches, and and these are really nice looking brass little wings.
And they have some weight to them.
And have some weight to them. And I kept thinking, how in the world, what is this going to do? Because often, we're thinking about a drum, and whether it's whatever company it's been, there's been a lot of thought put into a shell and down to just micrometers of what they've done.
Right.
And here we're going to go slap some big brass things in there.
And what's interesting about this process is we're used to manipulating a drum from the top.
Yeah.
With moon gel or some kind of muffling. This is in the center, and the relationship between the top and the bottom head are both affected at the same time, not just the top.
Yeah. And what I've thought is, I remember so many, most all drums, especially with the larger tension casings that were put without any kind of buffer right on what we would call the node of the drum. And that's a place where it kills it often. And a lot of manufacturers started thinking about that later on, and they changed, like Johnny with those, and DW, people would start putting a buffer in between. And so these would be mounting wherever the tension casing is. It doesn't really matter where it is, but so it takes would be in the node area, and then all of a sudden it's sort of magical, maybe. I'm not a physicist, so it's...
Yeah, right. It's hard to identify specifically, because it's not like a tactile item that's stuck to the drum, on the top to control overtones and harmonics and decay time. None of that is really impacted by my exposure to this. It's just the fundamental note gets through the drum, and the unfavorable harmonics that people like us worry about and engineers worry about, because that has to be dealt with when we hit the drum and it's recorded and it goes down the assembly line to mixing. it's not necessarily a beautiful thing to hit a floor tom and it decays for 15 minutes. That's a great sales pitch for a drum
Right.
to get you to buy one, but an engineer's going, what am I going to do with all that noise?
Right.
You
And
know?
then you start having to muffle it
That's
during the session.
The duct
yeah.
tape
Tape
and the
and
tissue.
other
and
people are waiting.
Yeah.
And the little gels.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's too much,
Yep.
and you're trying to find that sweet spot.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk about the process though, because it is experimental, right?
Yeah.
Every drum's different, head combination, and who's playing, and what they're looking for, what they want to hear. There's no right or wrong with the amount of
Yeah, exactly.
what you install into the shell.
Yeah, and for guys like us, or for anybody that is interesting, it does require some tinkering, and the process. I have my little cordless with a drum key bit on it next to me. Pull the head. I've kind of started doing. I'd go 4, and then hit the drum, put it back together, and think, ooh, that's kind of killed it. Again, it depends. Every drum's different. And every floor tom this size that John made is wood. It's going to be different. And I found that starting high and then maybe even recording it, I would either set it up in my thing and just at least hit it, or even with an iPhone, you can get something out of it. And then I'd kind of go, I'm not sure, and I'd pull that off and I'd pull one out and try it again. And then sometimes I thought, maybe these are just too big, and I'd try some of the smaller ones, and then do 3 spread out. And I kind of learned to not put one, or it depends again on the drum. So if you're hitting here, I wouldn't put one here.
Right, yeah.
And so I'd kind of do, this, and this, or this and here. And of all the drums I've put these on, none of them are exactly the same. But what it does to a drum, or if you have a kit, say you've got, because I know you've got some older vintage kits like I do, and there's maybe always something that's just got a little bit of, it's kind of like, and I've found that these bring them back.
Yeah.
They just bring tone out.
Yeah. We did an experiment on a nickel over brass. It was 5.5 by 14, called a Diamond Series. Basically, a vintage reproduction of an old Ludwig from the 20s. But basically, the nature of the shell is it's a brass shell like that. And my particular thoughts about that particular shell is that when I hit that drum on a tracking day, it's got a lot of overtone in it, but it's not the preferred overtone. I would typically reach for a different snare to get that degree of decay and overtone. So I thought, this is a good one to try these on, just to see, let's see about calming it down a bit. And so we put those on, and we did the little ones. And I don't remember exactly how many we put on that day, but I want to say it was 3.
3.
Yeah. And it was a really interesting thing, because nothing about the sound of the drum changed. The only thing that changed was the little less of the resonant and the wrong kinds of harmonics. Those weren't present any longer. So I got what I needed out of the drum without having to figure out how to calm it down.
Or shelve it.
Yeah.
I've got a kick at home that I've always liked. It's okay. And I thought I'm gonna stick 4 of these in here and see what it does. And so we're mostly, modern recording. We're baffling down, although it's fun to have nice open boom sometimes. But I found that it dropped the fundamental pitch. And again, that focus because we're not dealing with ugly overtones
Right.
like we are in toms and snares.
Right.
And
It enhanced the low end.
I was shocked.
You had more low end.
I had more low end than I actually drug that kit to a session one day, and I'd stuck them in the toms, and it's one of the early PDPs where they were still shells that were done at DW and the hardware was done elsewhere, and I'd always had it just for a throw in the car, throw under a bus for a one-off, and I pulled it out and went. And I took it to a date, again a non-Curtis date. Otherwise, that would have been you, because you're my guy. and I went to the engineer and I said, look, I've not really recorded with this kit. It's just sort of a one-off kit that I take around if I'm getting on a bus and going to, South Carolina to do a show with somebody. And so I'm not sure what it's going to be like under the microphones. He goes, Dennis, if you bring it in, I know it's going to be decent. And I said, well, thank you. I'm humbled, but I really don't know. And I had put the wings in it, set him up, and he comes out. We're over in Soundboard in B, and all of a sudden he's not behind the console, and he walks out through those doors, and he goes, anytime we record together, bring that kit. And I said, wow. And all I had done was put wings in them. Again,
all the way around, like 4 of them, or?
Well, I've learned by the time I got that far, was to, on the smaller, like even a 10, I'd only use 1. And then the next size up, maybe 2, next size up 2, and then maybe 3. And then the kick, there's a point where if you get too many in, just having the mass on a shell might dry it up.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's too much.
It's amazing. And I actually enjoy the
That's
tinkering.
the fun part.
Yeah.
Is going through the process of how many are going to actually end up in there.
Yeah.
In your drum.
Yeah.